Here is a number that should stop you in your tracks. In 1955, an Aussie 6-year-old walked to school on her own. In 2026, fewer than 1 in 5 Australian kids does. The capable, resilient, well-mannered generation your Nan raised was no accident. She did 12 quiet things almost nobody does anymore. Today, 12 lost parenting secrets every 1950s Aussie mum knew, and number 1 held all the others together. Hit subscribe, love. Let's get into it. Number 12. The children went outside in the morning and were not seen until tea. The back door opened at 9 in the morning, and the children of every street in Australia poured out into the day. They were 6, 7, 10 years old. There was no adult plan for them, no supervised activity, no timetable. They ran down to the creek, climbed the fig tree in the empty block, played cricket in the street with a paling for a bat, built a cubby out of corrugated iron and old fence palings down the back, rode bikes to the milk bar for an icy pole, and came home only when their mother stood at the front gate and called their name. The whole day free. The whole day theirs. Australian researchers have now shown that children today spend less than half an hour a day outdoors after school, while the children of that street in 1955 spent 6 hours of it. The result is a generation that can entertain themselves, solve their own problems, and use their imagination in a way that no modern child sitting on an iPad can. The outdoor day was the classroom. Number 11. Home when the streetlights came on, not before. There was no watch, no phone, no GPS. There was a rule that every Aussie child knew without it ever being said twice. When the streetlights flickered on at dusk, you ran home. Whether you were at the creek, the park, 3 streets away, you turned and ran for your own back door. And every Aussie child made it home every single night for 40 years. The mother was not at the kitchen window worrying. She was finishing the tea. The child was learning every single evening to read the sky, to gauge the time, to make her own way back. That small piece of independence, the simple ability to come home on your own when the day told you to, built something in a child that no modern adult-managed activity has ever been able to replicate. Self-reliance starts on the walk home in the dark. Number 10. They walked to school on their own from the age of 6. In 1955, the morning rhythm of an Aussie suburb was children walking. Down the footpath, in 2s and 3s, lunch tin in one hand, school bag over the shoulder, the whole walk taking 20 minutes and crossing 1 or 2 quiet streets. There was no parental escort. The mother kissed her at the front gate, watched her go round the corner, and then went back to put the next load of washing on. She trusted the child to make the walk, and the child knew she was trusted. By the time that child was 12, she had been walking home alone for 6 years. She knew her own neighborhood by heart. She had said hello to the postman, the milkman, and the lady from the corner shop 10,000 times. The street was raising her, alongside her mother, and the street had her back. Modern Australian researchers have now found that fewer than half of children are allowed to walk alone in their own neighborhood. The children who lose that simple morning walk lose with it the quiet competence that came from making it for themselves. Number 9. The whole family sat down to tea at 6, every night, no exceptions. In 1955, in every Aussie home, 6 o'clock was tea time and the whole family was at the table. The wireless was off. There was no television in the dining room. The father was home from work, the children were washed for tea, and the food was on the plates. And for the next 40 minutes, they ate together. They talked about the day. The children answered the questions the parents asked. They learned, simply by listening, what their parents thought about the world. They were corrected when their elbows were on the table. They were sent for the salt when they had forgotten to put it out. Every modern study on child well-being now points to the family dinner table as the single most important room in a child's upbringing.
Children who eat together regularly do better at school, are less anxious, are less likely to take up smoking or drinking as teenagers, and grow into more confident adults. Your Nan was not running a study. She was simply putting the tea on the table at 6 every single night for 40 years, and the children of that table are the calm, capable Aussies still sitting on verandas across this country. Number 8. The children said yes, mum, no, mum, and they meant it. This sounds old-fashioned now. It was 1,000 years of quiet wisdom. Aussie children of the 1950s addressed their parents with respect, not because the parents demanded it like tyrants, but because respect was simply the air the household breathed. When your mother asked you to set the table, you said, "Yes, Mum," and you set the table. When she asked if you had finished your homework, you answered honestly. When your father came home from work tired, you did not pester him until he had his cup of tea. The children learned from a very early age that other people in the house had needs and rhythms of their own, and that to live well in a family was to notice those needs and step around them. That is, in plain language, what we now call emotional intelligence, and it was built quietly into every Aussie child by the simple expectation that "yes, Mum" was the right answer.
The children who learned to say yes, Mum at 6 learned by 26 to say yes to their employer, their wife, their community, and their own better instincts. The polite child became the capable adult. We have lost the chain. Number 7. They had real chores from the time they could stand. In 1955, a 4-year-old set the cutlery on the dinner table. A 6-year-old fed the chooks and collected the eggs. By 8, she was peeling potatoes for the tea and bringing in the washing off the hills hoist if rain looked likely. By 10, she could mind the younger ones while her mother walked down to the corner shop. By 12, she could make the family a proper meal if her mother was poorly. These were not chores in the modern, scolding, written on a fridge chart sense. They were simply how a child contributed to the home she lived in. And in the contribution, she learned the most important lesson of a useful life. I am needed here. What I do matters. People are counting on me. The modern Australian child, raised with no real responsibility, grows into an adult who has never been counted on, and who secretly finds adulthood terrifying because nothing has ever been asked of him before. Your Nan was building a capable adult, one peeled potato at a time. If you grew up in a household where the children helped, where you knew your place at the table, where the streetlights told you when to come home, hit the like button right now. That household is exactly who this channel is for.
And number 1 is the secret that quietly made all the others work. Stay with me. Number 6. They lost gracefully, and they were allowed to. In the 1950s, when Aussie children played a game in the street, somebody won and somebody lost. The winner was congratulated, and the loser was told, simply and kindly, that there was always next time. There were no participation ribbons. There were no trophies handed to everyone. The losing team walked home a bit quieter and tried harder to next afternoon. And in that small, quiet, daily experience of not always winning, an Aussie child learned a lesson that has now become almost impossible to teach a modern child. The world will not arrange itself around your feelings. Sometimes you will lose. Sometimes you will not get the part. Sometimes the other team is better. And the only useful response to any of that is to go home, have a cup of milk, and turn up again tomorrow. The capable adult who can take a hard knock at work and keep going was once, in 1955, the 7-year-old who lost the school egg and spoon race and was told, "Well played, off you go for tea." Number 5. They ate what was put in front of them, full stop. There was no children's menu in 1955. There were no separate meals cooked for the small humans of the house. The family had lamb chops and 3 vegetables for tea, so the children had lamb chops and 3 vegetables for tea.
If a child did not care for the peas, the child ate the peas anyway because she had been served the peas. There was no negotiation. There was no special bowl of plain pasta. The mother did not run a restaurant. She ran a family. And the result, across a whole generation, was a country full of adults who eat almost anything, are not anxious around food, are not bothered by an unfamiliar dish at a friend's house, and quietly raise their own children to do the same. The modern phenomenon of the fussy child is in plain truth a modern parenting habit, not a modern child. Your Nan never had a fussy eater because she never gave the child the chance to be one. Number 4. School trouble was double trouble at home. This is the one a whole generation of Aussie kids understood without it ever being explained. If you got in trouble at school for being cheeky to the teacher, throwing your lunch in the bin, or fighting in the playground, the teacher told your mother at the school gate that afternoon, and by the time your father got home from work, your mother had told him, and you were in for it twice. The school and the home were on the same team. There was no parent storming up to the school to complain that the teacher was being unfair to the child. There was no taking the child's side against the adult who had told her off.
The child learnt a quiet, important fact about the world. Adults are on the side of other adults.
If you are in trouble with an adult, it is probably because you have done something that warrants it. Now compare that to the modern household, where every minor school discipline becomes a complaint from the parent to the principal. And ask, honestly, why the child of that household has so little respect for any adult anywhere. Your Nan had no such problem. The chain of authority held. Number 3. The grandparents were in the house every Sunday. In 1955, an Aussie family did not see the grandparents on Skype once a month for 15 minutes. They saw them on Sunday afternoon, every single Sunday, in their own kitchen or in the grandparents' parlor, for 2 or 3 hours over a cup of tea and a slice of sponge cake. The child grew up knowing her Nan and her Pop by smell, by the sound of their voices, by the feel of the old armchair in their lounge. The grandparents told her stories from the war years, taught her to play cards, slipped her sixpence for the icy pole on the way home. And the child, without ever knowing she was being taught anything, was being shown that life is long, that families stretch back across generations, that old people have lived through more than she could imagine and have things to tell her. That single weekly visit was an entire education in patience, history, family, and the dignity of age. The modern child, raised at arm's length from her own grandparents, is missing a piece of her own self and does not know it. Number 2.
The mother was the mother, not the friend. This one matters more than almost anything else on the list. In 1955, your Nan did not try to be her children's friend. She had her own friends, Dorothy from next door and Frances from the auxiliary, and she had her sister on the phone every Thursday. The children have their own friends in the street, and the mother, in the household, was the warm, firm, loving authority. She kissed the cut knee, she laughed at the funny stories, she rocked the child to sleep when the child was poorly. But she also said no when no was the right answer, and the child knew, deep in her bones, that no meant no. The modern parent who tries to be her child's best friend, who fears the child being cross with her, who negotiates rather than instructs, has raised a generation of children who do not know where the edges of the world are and who are quietly more anxious for it. A child does not need a friend her own size. She has those. She needs a mother. And your Nan was the mother, all the way through, with no apology and no confusion about it. Number 1. The child was loved, and she knew it, and she was also expected to rise to her own responsibilities. This is the one. This is the secret that quietly held every other rule on this list together, and modern parenting books have spent 50 years trying to write around it without saying it. Because here is what your Nan understood in her bones. Love and high expectations are not opposites.
They are the same thing. She loved her children completely. Their warm cheeks at bedtime, the small drawings on the fridge, the bandaged knees, the school photos lined up on the mantel, every one of them was the center of her world. And precisely because she loved them, she expected them to become capable adults. She did not want her daughter to be 18 and not know how to cook a meal. She did not want her son to be 25 and not know how to look an employer in the eye. The expectations were the love made practical. They were her daily, quiet act of confidence in her child. You are capable. I expect you to rise to it. I would not bother expecting it if I did not love you. The modern parent who lowers every expectation to spare the child's feelings is not loving the child. She is, without meaning to, telling the child that the child cannot rise. Your Nan never sent that message, not for one day, for 40 years. And the capable, calm, resilient Aussies in their 70s, still walking their own dogs at 6 in the morning, fixing their own taps, telling their own grandchildren no when no is the right answer, are the proof of what her quiet daily expectations built. 12 secrets. Not one of them needed a parenting book, and not one of them has gone out of date, no matter what anyone tells you.
Outside in the morning, home with the street lights, walking to school, sitting down to tea, yes, Mum, real chores, losing gracefully, eating what was served, school trouble meant home trouble, Sunday with the grandparents, the mother as the mother, and the love that ran underneath all of it as quiet expectation. Tell me in the comments which of these the woman who raised you lived by, and which one you are bringing back into your own week.
Subscribe and hit the bell, love, and I will see you on the veranda.